Will back-to-back national championships by the Bulldogs be enough to convince the media at the upcoming SEC Media Days to pick Georgia to win the conference, despite picking Alabama to win the past 7 seasons? We'll find out when the event kicks off July 17th in Nashville, but a talented returning cast certainly makes a strong case. Speaking of guys coming back, one of those guys is quarterback Carson Beck, who was sort of the presumptive backup behind Stetson Bennett last year, got the most minutes at backup, but he will not be one of Georgia's 3 player representatives in Nashville. That'll be cornerback Kamari Lassiter, tight end Brock Bowers, and center Sedrick Van Pran. Now, Georgia's also got quarterback Brock Vandegrift on the roster. What do you think it means that Carson Beck, no, we can't read too much into it just yet, but what do you think it means that Georgia's not sending a quarterback?
Well, you know, everybody likes to use the term quarterback controversy, and I'm not sure that's necessarily what we have here, right? But it will push that narrative well on in to preseason camp. I mean, if you look around the SEC, I mean, I'm thinking of Tennessee in particular, a couple other teams, they're going to bring Joe Milton, you know, so technically there are other quarterbacks there, but they have anointed him as the starter. Same thing at a few other schools. Georgia hasn't done that. Now, I'll say it right here clearly. I expect Carson Beck to be the starting quarterback in the opening game to start the season, but that's not how Kirby Smart plays, right? I mean, he's going to keep all those quarterbacks in that quarterback room, and that includes Gunnar Stockton. That includes the guys coming down the road. He's going to keep them all engaged and competitive, and that's going to be the case for Vandegrift as well. So I expect Carson Beck to be the starter, but it is a little bit telling that they didn't include him on the roster for the SEC Media Days.
But it is an all-star contingent that Georgia is bringing to Nashville. What do you make of the guys, the trio of guys that will be there?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, Brock Bowers, come on. I mean, there's not a better tight end in college football, if not a better player, and that'll be interesting to see how much he might get his name in the Heisman race, certainly in the early going. A lot will depend on what he's able to produce on the field. I mean, I think it's no surprise that Sedrick Van Pran is included. Listen, this is a guy I think who's been undervalued, underappreciated to this point. He's going to be a preseason All-American, preseason All-SEC, and Georgia's really lucky that he decided to come back for a third season as technically a redshirt junior. I thought a little bit of a surprise, Kamari Lassiter. You know, from the standpoint of you got Javon Bullard, you got Jamon Dumas-Johnson, you got Zion Logue, you got a lot of other guys you could have chosen to be your spokesperson for the defense. But Kamari Lassiter, you've met him before. He's a really sharp guy. He started 15 games at cornerback last year, played 14 games a year before that. He's a sharp dude, and he's very well-spoken, which ultimately, when you're going before 1,000 media types in Nashville, Tennessee, that's generally a good thing to be well-spoken.
One of the things that Georgia coach Kirby Smart said at last year's media day is we will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. What do you expect to hear from Kirby Smart this year at Media Days? It seems like he always kind of has a turn of phrase that kind of becomes a theme.
Yeah, I'd like to say a couple of things on this front because I do think I'm impressed with Kirby. I mean, he was a new guy in 2016 when we went over to Hoover for his first SEC Media Days. You know, he had been behind the scenes at Alabama under Nick Saban. You didn't really know what to expect. You know, in the 8 years since, we kind of know what to expect, right? I mean, Kirby comes with a message, generally a phrase, the phrase that pays, right? I mean, this is where we learn chopping wood. We won't be hunted, you know, whatever the theme is for that particular year. And he has one. He has a lot to choose from, you know. Georgia going for the three-peat will be a huge national narrative. I'm sure he's going to squash that as quickly as he possibly can. You know, it's been a tumultuous offseason. He may build something into that. But you can be sure that he'll have a phrase that pays on Tuesday when Georgia goes before the media at 9 that morning.
Now, on Monday, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey will address the media, too. There's a lot of directions that could go, from SEC expansion, with Texas and Oklahoma joining the mix, to NIL stuff. I mean, really, the limit does not exist with how much he could address. What do you project he'll talk about, though, and the questions that'll get thrown his way?
Well, clearly he's going to have to touch on that. Obviously, 2024, the league expands, Texas and Oklahoma. What's that going to mean? But I actually think that'll be probably a really small percentage of this. My understanding from Birmingham is that, you know, he's going to want to turn the narrative into the present day, into the season that's coming up. It's still East versus West. That's going away next year. You know, so that's going to be a big deal. And, you know, listen, transfer portal, NIL, all those kind of things are really at the forefront right now, and there's a lot to talk about in that regard, as well as some rules changes and stuff like that. It's always interesting to get the commissioner's thoughts at the beginning of this. And listen, talking about Kirby Smart a while ago, Greg Sankey doesn't waste his opportunities. He will come with a message, and he'll come hard.
Make sure y'all follow along with our coverage from SEC Media Days. That'll start July 17th. Chip, thank you so much for joining me. Thanks to all of you for watching. Make sure you go to ajc.com or subscribe to our YouTube channel to find more videos just like this one.